people who were in a real home invasion situation. What was it like and what did you do? Dude came knocking on the front door and my mom and I ignored it. I was about 10 and my mom didn't want to answer the door to a stranger. He knocked a while, then went around the back and hopped the gate to try the back door. My mom got her gun and opened the back door with it visible, right before he tried to smash the glass. He took off running and was arrested on BE charges the next day after he broke into someone else's apartment and couldn't run. I was at my friend's place when it happened to him. We were both teenagers then. The guy thought everyone was sleeping and he got startled when he saw us. He bit my friend, his arm required stitches from the bite and ran away. No idea who the guy was or what he wanted. Never happened again and we never saw the guy again. Tackled the guy. The hardest I've ever hit someone, and I'm a pretty big guy with a football background. But he didn't see me coming. It felt very much like a do or die moment, so I didn't hold anything back. Broke a few of his bones, messed up his face, and got him sentenced to 6 years. My in-laws were home when a young guy broke into their house. They don't speak English very well, so my FIL, in the clearest English he could muster, loudly said, "Get me my gun." At that point the intruder left in a hurry. 4 guys knocked on my buddy's door at 11 p.m. He lived with a bunch of other guys, so this wasn't anything new. They burst in and held a gun to his neck and demanded the drugs. He stammered that there weren't any drugs but they could take what they wanted. One guy held him there with the gun as the others searched the house. Since they didn't find anything, they realized they had the wrong house and left. As they were leaving, the last guy said, "Sorry, this wasn't my idea." Not me, but my aunt. She was at home alone in her backyard making food, and when she walked into the living room, she saw a couple of men in the middle of carrying out the TV. It seems that they didn't think anyone was at home. They got surprised, dropped the TV, and ran out after she started screaming. Girlfriend and I were sleeping in bed. Some dummy broke into our apartment, ran real quick when he saw how big my naked ass was. My cousin's grandparents' house got broken into. I was still very young and my parents and I just left their house 30 minutes ago when we got the phone call that there was a robbery. There were 5 to 8 intruders who came armed and beat both of them very badly, and them being elderly didn't help either. Anyways, they were admitted to a hospital but sadly passed away a few weeks later. Just makes me wonder, I probably would have been dead too if we just have stayed a bit longer. They were so nice too, so it makes me sad it happened to them. Edit. English ain't my first language. Freaked the fuck out, let them take whatever they wanted, and held my cat. It was friends of my sister, she'd fucked them on some drugs and I guess I was convenient. They took almost all my electronics and raided the fridge. My wife was. She came home from her morning shift to find 2 guys standing in our apartment, wrapping up their heist. She freaked out. They freaked out. Then they ran and she ran after for a while and then called the cops. That was that. Our previous neighbor had a habit of just walking into our house unlocked back door. It was the early 80s. One day my dad was taking a shower and he stepped out of the bathroom in a towel to find our neighbor standing there. Soon after, a fence with a lock was installed in our backyard. We were told it was for our safety as kids, but my dad told me the truth when I was an adult. So fucking creepy though. My aunt and cousin had a legit home invasion happen many years ago. Gang members came to the door and barged in, pistol whipped my cousin, tore the house up. The intruders didn't speak English and apparently had the wrong house. After realizing it was the wrong house, they left. This was in Tucson, Arizona, probably about 20 years ago. My door was kicked in at just after 2 a.m. I walked out into the living room holding my gun. I said, "I'm armed," loudly, and at that point I heard someone chamber a round into a pistol, and I started shooting. I hit him twice and he died. I have no regrets. Police told me he had just gotten out of prison a few days before for a similar crime. I was sleeping after a night shift, woke up, went to kitchen to see 2 guys working on my sliding glass door with a screwdriver. I was still half asleep and it took a few seconds to register. Got my .22 rifle, my only gun at the time, and open up the side kitchen door. Their getaway driver was parked across the street and started honking. They bolted. I walked out in my underwear with rifle to watch them peel out. But I'm sure they would have gotten in had they had another 10 minutes. My brother and I were kids 10 and 9, and my parents had gone out for a few hours. Someone knocked on the door, and when we opened it, he barged past us into the house and bolted into the living room. We tentatively followed him to see what he was doing and found him sitting on the couch playing with my dad's guitar. He was childlike, so we sat with him for a while till we heard another knock at the door. One of the neighborhood aunties had been looking for him, and she took him away. When my parents got home, they explained that he has trisomy 21. I was asleep, and something woke me up. I sat up, didn't hear anything, and then decided to get up. I swung my feet out of bed and stepped on someone. I screamed so loud, and they bolted out the back door. I went to high school with a guy who was doing some burglary. Well, the family came home while he was in there. One thing led to another and he lost his pants and loosed his bowels. Needless to say, he was known as the turd burglar for years. Heard my door get kicked and yelled I got a gun and slammed books on the ground. Two guys in all black ran out the door faster than they kicked it in. I don't have a gun. My mom was super into medieval decor. I was maybe 4 and my sister was 10. This guy breaks in with a shotgun and my 5 feet 2 inches mom with the craziest curly red hair, think the girl from the movie Brave, and wearing a robe, grabs a bastard sword off the wall and rushes the dude. I think the guy was in so much shock he forgot he had a gun and just took off running. Lesson I learned that day is you don't fuck with a Scottish woman's children, lol. I came home for lunch from work to find my front door opened. Figured it was my roommate, but both of our dogs were locked up, which didn't make sense if he was home. I walked into the garage to see if he was there and a guy came running out the front door from the other end of our house. Most importantly, no one was hurt, but they did take some valuables. When my mom was about 10 years old, she was home alone and her home was broken into in the middle of the afternoon, broad daylight. I think there were at least 3 guys. She was terrified because it was pretty shortly after Ethan Patz had been abducted and he had grown up relatively near her. Kidnapping has always been one of her biggest fears. She hid in a closet and I believe a neighbor witnessed the break-in happening and called the police. The burglars got away before the cops arrived but were later caught with the stolen items. They never had any idea that she was home. I was in the basement playing Dead Space 2, thought they were there to do remodeling upstairs. Well, they remodeled the back door. No one was home when this happened, but the home invaders came in through a small window screen. It was hot out. They would have had to really work at it to get in. They opened every drawer and closet and spilled the contents on the floor. They only took 1 ring and 1 watch, presumably items they could pawn easily. That's it, that's all they took. They left the computers, TV, digital cameras. House was a disaster. I was in my room playing Destiny with my headset on. Didn't hear a damn thing. Went out to the living room to find our backyard window smashed and the house ransacked. Loudly crying face, loudly crying face, loudly crying face, loudly crying face. They really hit a lick on me while I was home and I didn't even know it. 2 guys came through my front door and I was chopped 3 times with a machete and beaten with a pistol. My house was robbed and they ran off. My roommate sleeping in the basement saved my life. The living room walls, ceiling, floor, and couch were covered in blood. I had my knee femur cut through, most tendons on my forearm chopped to the bone, and my ankle had a gash. I had several lacerations on my scalp. A week in intensive care and several months before I started learning how to walk again. 2 things I've gathered from this. 1. The police are rarely any help in these situations. 2. Having a gun and not even pulling the trigger is an effective